What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to continue the conversation on mental diets and hopefully add something positive to your mental diet for today. I just got on the agenda here talk about revision, and that is a Neville Goddard technique for kind of looking at your past, the quote unquote past, and giving it a new story, giving it a new meaning, defining it differently. Instead of like recreating these same narratives and these disempowering stories, of like, oh, boohoo, I was a victim of, someone being mean to me and I deserve it because and then spinning out in your mind for the next 20 minutes 30 minutes of clock time, telling yourself these stories of this, maybe an argument that you just got into, or somebody was just rude and inconsiderate for no reason. Instead of letting that spin you out and getting you triggered and then all of a sudden drift into a state of being that you ultimately don't want to experience, look at that situation and give it a new meaning. So by revising that, using revision, if you're not familiar with Neville Goddard and revision, any of these kind of metaphysical kind of ideas, try to basically lay it out there in that way, but then you also then applying it by looking at what happened, whatever that is. Maybe you've seen something that triggered you on social media. You've seen something coming through a screen. We got a new variant, we got a new this, we got a new whatever to freak out and be hysterical about. Instead of just being reactive, start being creative, and so, ideally, how would you have liked that situation to play out? And if you're going to follow like the kind of the teachings, the practices of Neville Goddard, he would say to, at the end of the day, get into a state akin to sleep, which is like right at that twilight stage where you're laying in your bed right before you drift off into dreamland or whatever. But I think you can also become more and more still and present and stay in that state as you become accepting of the situation. And I know that can be a trigger because it's like accepting accept that this person was an asshole, accept that that person was an idiot, accept that that person was just being a fucking whatever, fill in the blank, whatever. Whenever you're having these mental conversations, especially about others, and you're trying to like be better than them or more good than that other person, it's a kind of a red flag to start to reevaluate what's happening. Instead of just could be because the old mind likes to attack and just feel superior, and it gets some sort of a satisfaction out of like attacking others and attacking the situation and just obsessing about it in the mind, where revision allows you to see what just happened and then extend forgiveness and realize that the future, where that maybe that behavior is different or whatever, acceptance in that moment, seeing the contrast, forgiving that in the other person is also forgiving it in yourself, because more than likely you're doing the same shit. But like from there, taking it to the next level where you realize that time is a loop, and so as you plant these new seeds in your consciousness, part of like the law of attraction that I feel like is a stumbling block is like this constantly spending the present moment in a state of waiting, and ultimately expressing to creation that you are the opposite of what you desire. And then a lot of times that can make a feedback loop of the undesirable continuously manifesting in the present, getting into more and more of these, getting out in the weeds, basically. Where using revision, you can change the past to experience the present moment in a more desirable state, and so part of how to do that is in forgiveness, extending forgiveness. When you see a state in another, realize we're all connected, so that state is also within you, and by forgiving that in another, you forgive that in yourself, and then you start to level up from right here and now. That's no longer a problem. It's like revision, to me at least, has to do with seeing and experiencing, even in thought. But, if it's manifested into a situation, a circumstance or an event or whatever it is, instead of being in denial about it or running from it or trying to change it and fix it, radically start to accept what happens, what's unfolding is unfolding perfectly, in God's timing and God's ways. Take yourself, this version, this concept of self that was from the old concept of self, and instead of like sitting there trying to figure it out in your mind, hand the problem over to God and just ask, how do you see this situation? And then if you start getting some resistant thought of like, oh, this is stupid, blah, 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 you start telling yourself these old stories, and you're like, that wasn't it, do it again, ask God again and again and again, maybe 4 or 5 times, you get through these old stories. Eventually you'll get to a spot where it's like, I have no story anymore. And then you're open to receive a new idea, a new way of looking at it, a way of thinking about it. And that comes from infinite intelligence, which ultimately knows what's going on and is aware of all things, and realizing more and more so that when you drift into these unconscious patterns of suffering, God experiences the opposite, the contrast of that, and is thankful that you went through it, but you don't have to continuously go to it, through it, because what you're experiencing in the contrast, the opposite's already being played out, if that makes sense. So it's like for every bit of pain you've been in, the contrast is, the feel goodness. It's like you can't have hot without cold. It's like, so in that contrast, God already experiences it. And then you come into an agreement in the present moment to be where God's at, in that heavenly state as opposed to that state of suffering and hell, and so the more that you're able to quickly shift that, if that makes sense, and that's part of like a revision type thing. So say you got in an argument, maybe with your spouse, or seen something in the world. A lot of times, our marriages reflect a lot of what's going on in life anyway, but it's just more personal. It's easier to kind of connect with that, and seeing, the small game and the large game is kind of all still connected in consciousness, but, through revision, you're able to retroactively, it's already been done. It's like you don't have to keep begging and pleading. You were in a state of suffering. The opposite was already created alongside of that. God's already experienced it and wants to experience it with you, which that is within you, that experience. As you're able to be still and connect with it, that reflection will start to reflect that change. And the more that you stop looking to the future for that change to manifest, but look towards the past as it's already done, you just have to walk into that now. That conflict was not really a conflict. It was a bridge of incidents to bring you more peace, more joy, more happiness. Look at all these things as being seeds that you can plant in the garden of consciousness that will reap in God's timing. But as you embody the state of it's already been done, your faith gets rewarded. And, you can test this for yourself. You don't have to just sit here, oh, just listen to this guy out here. He's got all the answers. It's like, it's literally, you can do this, and you can experience this with your own beingness, and see it and experience it. And it's for you to experience and see it. It's for everybody to do that. Part of the old mindset is like, oh, everybody's separate, and you got people that are whatever, the special boys and the special girls, and then there's everybody else. But it's like, we're all in the same boat here, and the thing of it is like looking towards this future, which if we're watching what's going on in culture, it seems like this future or some dystopian nightmare unfolding, but it's also an illusion where it's like you can shift out of that kind of future, because the quote unquote future, which is all imaginary, the future is not real. The only time that is real is now. And what you experience now is a reaping of the past, even though the past is also not real. It's like it's what you are holding in your consciousness as what you believe who you are, and who you are is ultimately interconnected with with God and your relationship with God. So it's like that is what's being externalized in a lot of different ways, is your identity, your sense of self. And if your self is this little brain and a body ego, that's separate from everything, experiencing all these separate wills, the will of nature and the will of man and the will of the animal kingdom and the will of whatever, your body, it's got a separate will too. It's like, oh, your mind says I want to be healthy and happy, but your body says, oh no, we want to be in pain and suffering. It's like the belief in all these different wills is part of the problem, but then you can start to correct these things by revision, which, if you're a student, I guess, of like some of the teachings of Neville Goddard or just the Bible, you don't have to, it's already been done. It's already been laid out there for you. You don't have to discover, you don't have to create anything that's like, oh, how do I save myself from the, it's like Jesus already did it. It's like, it's already been done. And it just kind of depends on how you're looking at it. It's like if you're connecting with Jesus as like the suffering Jesus on the cross, that's one thing, but you got to keep in mind too, the resurrected Jesus. You connect with that Jesus too. The King of King Jesus. It's just like, and where is that Jesus? According to the Bible, that is within you. Is where Jesus is. The resurrected Christ is within you. And so you can look into the Bible for yourself. It's in the New Testament. Paul wrote that, and Paul is the disciple for the Gentiles according to the Bible. Which I and me too. I've gotten these things where it's just like, it's like reading the Bible. I was only like reading like the red letters. It's like, I'm not gonna just, and there was like a flow to it, but depending on where your faith is and whatnot, it's like, get into it for yourself, realize the teacher's within you. So it's like you can start to figure these things out. But really important concept to start to put into practice is revision and redefining things that are happening in the day, because everybody, it's like, I know I do, I get stuck in these like patterns of waiting, or it's like, oh, when is this going to start to reflect into reality, or when is this going to happen, and when is that? It's like when you're looking for it to unfold in this quote unquote future, you're going to stay in a cycle of waiting. But if you look at it more of like it can happen in the past to bring you that now, that's a more of an assumptive state, which is part of your faith. It's like nothing's impossible for God to do. So to believe that the past is a concrete thing is an illusion, and it's a limiting belief. And ultimately you can start to see that for yourself as you really start to throw out the old paradigm of materialism and linear time. When all things exist now, it's quantum. It's a quantum field. It's everything already exists. It's like you can shift into these different states now and the more that you're in now, the more you'll see the past start to reflect that new change. It's not, and you'll see that too in culture with like maybe like the COVID shit, where it's like now all of a sudden you look back in history and everybody's wearing masks and there's all this pandemic shit, and it's just like, there's a retro causality thing going on to consciousness, where it's part of the trick is to keep you in an illusion of future, even though the past and the future are all construct. It's all mental. It's like whenever you remember the past, you're remembering that now, and if whenever you're thinking of the future, you're thinking about that now, and thinking that, oh, well, and it's like, well, Mike, well, this is solid and this is real, and it's like you can see it for yourself as you start to do this. It's like you'll start following these synchronicities, and that's like, next thing you know, you have a level up in your consciousness, and it's like you start learning these new metaphysical truths about relationship with God and faith and Jesus and heavenly things and all this and that, but it's like, what I feel like also is a stumbling block, now that kind of talking about that, where it's like, desire, Jesus kind of, because you'll hear like a lot of maybe teachers online, mostly, I don't see many people that are conscious, in my day to day, but, I don't really seek it, but like, talking about like, you got an SP, the specific person you want to do something with, or you got some specific desire. Jesus taught us, to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added. So it's like if you aren't seeking the kingdom, which I believe is experiencing a state of heaven on earth now, and experiencing that, reflecting back, and realizing that the past and the future are all connected now. It's all simultaneously happening. And you can shift into those desired states of consciousness now, because ultimately what you're desiring is to experience love, which is another way of saying desiring just to experience God, and there is only God, there is only consciousness, in this holographic simulation, whatever, that it's, all these things are already going on. It's like your state of being, you are experiencing the world through your state of being. And you can change your state of being as simple as choosing to, where like the old man would just drift into states of hell and suffering unconsciously, and mostly with fear and believing that you're separate from your experiences of life, and everything's separate, but using revision, it's easier and easier to start to embody those states of consciousness that you desire now by just asking, is this what you want to experience in heaven? What is heavenly? What would be a heavenly out? Being connected with God. It's like, seeing God being reflective, in your 3D world. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Seeing more people giving a shit, loving, not just reacting out of fear, just being puppeted around, just like unconscious automatons. Wouldn't it be nice? That more people are, trying to evolve their state of consciousness, breaking out of this kind of slave authoritarian mentality, which that, I feel like is pretty reflective of an antichrist spirit, being a slave, the Egyptian, Moses. I mean, there's so many correlations to these states of, if you look in the Bible, it's like all of these states of consciousness exist, and this has been going on. It's like, even the story, of Moses, and the Egyptians. It's like, welcome to Egypt. You see Pharaoh running around telling you to take experimental injections, some potion spells, and and ultimately, even that is. I feel like even that is an illusion, where it's just like, for the people that have faith that works, it probably will work. And for those that don't, probably won't, and it's just like, everything is based on your faith. Part of this thing is merging your faith with the faith of Jesus, where it's just like, learning these lessons of faith and everything. But also, putting the shit into practice, practice. And it's like, when do you do that? Well, it's like now. It's only ever now. So it's like, what are you doing right now to elevate your state of consciousness? Is there something haunting you from the past? Start to revise it. How would you feel if that never actually happened? If you could shift to a reality where that wasn't real. And that might be a little far out there for people. And it is what it is. Because, me personally, I'd like to explore as far as possible. So it's like, I don't expect, I don't expect the people that are just finding out the news isn't real, to go, oh yeah, you can shift through the multiverse. You shift through creation. It's all a simulation anyway. It's all holographic, but you never know unless you try. And so that's what I'm encouraging you to try it for yourself, see that it works, and then be triggered that, oh my gosh, that couldn't possibly have just happened. How many times that happened over and over and over again? It's like how many synchronicities and miraculous things he experienced, and it's like still be a doubting Thomas. It's funny, but like, I think I'm gonna bounce. I'm working on a new track. You got, a little bit of extra time. I'm working on, like, I think I'm gonna be a guitar track. It's gonna be something I'm licensed, it's gonna be like music licensing type thing, probably, put it out to the publishing people, see if they can, move it, I guess, because it seems like that's a good use of time, I guess, for the day. hopefully, and if you guys, make YouTube videos or anything, you can always, go to my SoundCloud. You can download and use it for free. I don't care if you monetize your stuff. It's just like a way for me, I guess, to have like a revenue stream outside of, doing handyman work and everything. So ultimately, can continue to stay free and provide, I guess, value to others. I feel like that's important, and it's important. What's funny though too, it's like sitting down doing this. I started laying out the drums, to track over with the guitar, and it's just like I used to have such a, I don't know, just like a hang up when it came to like just doing music, thinking, oh, this one could be it. This one, this is like really putting a lot of like the same energy that I would do like a handyman, like painting a really fancy living room or something, where it's just like, just gonna just do it. Do it, and we'll see what happens. Oh, and I was gonna let you guys know too. I've been playing guitar at my church. That has been a whole progression there too. But like, working on. They've already got it set up to do streaming, so you guys could watch that. Too. The problem is like getting the sound to translate from recorded to from live to recorded to streaming to YouTube. It's a lot of mixing stuff going on that needs to be, in my opinion, fixed. But like, once that does get fixed, though, I show you guys the link. You can kind of check on that, especially if you don't have like a church you're going to. I feel like it's important to. I didn't used to. It's like for probably the most part of this thing, I was like church hopping. Didn't really. I had so triggered by religion, but like this has all come together real synchronistically, and I'm, kind of enjoying, kind of the community aspect of things. I feel like is really important, to continue to network and community build and just like keep a lot of this, because like boots on the ground here, it's like compared to what you see through a screen. It's like things are like normal around here. I mean, the only type of COVID hysteria you see is like maybe in the paper, I guess. It's like we got some new cases. We have the moron strain going on. And it's just like, and to me, it's just so obvious that it's just, like one of my family members, my grandpa, he's like in a nursing home because he's got like a. How do you call it? It's kind of it's not a. It's when you can't remember shit, but it's not. I don't know. Long story short, he's been like in there, not really able to take care of himself. And one of my family members thought it was a good idea to get him a booster shot, and then the day later, next thing he's got COVID. Even though the nursing home's been on lockdown for a couple weeks now, it's just like you can't see how these things are connecting, and it's like ultimately, I got to like trust that it's all part of God's plan, and everything's working out the way it's supposed to. Part of moving forward for me is radically accepting the present moment, because sitting there resisting it and fighting it and everything else is not helpful, and it keeps you in a state of resistance, which then builds a bigger problem, which then all of a sudden now you're dealing with this loop that's undesirable. We're accepting that God's in control of it. God's manifesting this thing perfectly, not only in this quote unquote future that will be revealed, but through the past, present, and it's all connected. It's all one thing, and getting a more of a, not an expert in this, by any means yet, but like putting that on, exploring now, and then using that revision instantly when things, there's some contrast or some obvious thing, that's fear-based, some fear-based limiting belief or some assumption that's asserting itself or any of these types of things in consciousness, which then, before it then starts to create a limiting belief loop with, there's confirmations, look at the confirmations, see all these reasons why you think you should be in this little prison box. Let go of those things, and just like this entire flow has been, part of an awakening experience, changing, revising all of these types of old stories and these old beliefs and everything else, not only now, but retroactively, that it's all, that God's been there every step of the way, that this thing is building to more and more states of heavenly experiences that are, expansive and growing. All of the pain and the suffering, unconsciously, God created the exact opposite that God experienced, during that process of unconsciousness, that's waiting for you then to experience now, is another way to look at things. All of these things, are things that we're saying, that we're telling ourselves, but if we're in error, the problem is then that error starts to become more and more manifest. So it's important to really focus on what is true, what is a true thing, what is a false belief, and really getting into the Bible and in prayer, asking, believing, receiving, and figuring this thing out for yourself. And hopefully then, as you begin to start to get some wisdom, some understanding, some elevated levels of consciousness, that starts to then reflect into your experience of life, and then more, because we're all connected. I mean, looking at anybody through a lens of like, fuck that person, I hope they fill in the blank, is you're saying it about yourself, and it's like, how many times is it do you look at people, I know I do this, where it's just like, not having any trust for just a stranger. It's like, what are you up to, type thing, versus like, just having, inherent like love for another person, something to work on. And so, and with that being said, I think I'm going to balance. I'm going to start working on that track. It's about noon now. I got, hopefully finish this thing up in a day. We'll find out. So stay tuned for that. And if you feel like downloading it, using it in your videos, if you're making truth videos, at least, you can use it for free. If you're just making, trying to make money and pay for a license, but like, are we signaling? But with that said, I think I'm balanced. So thanks everybody for listening, liking, sharing, subscribing. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. And until the next now, God bless.